Unfortunately, as we said on the earlier edition of Locked On Oilers, just when it seems like the Oilers have taken 3 steps forward, they take 2 steps back. Monday night did not go to plan.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second Monday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So today's episode, we're going to dive on into the unfortunate and really just flat out ugly loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Our first segment, we're going to talk about what potentially losing Connor McDavid does for the opening segment. The second segment, we're going to talk about some of the things I didn't like about the game. There was some effort, some attention to detail stuff that really kind of jumped out at me as lagging. And then our final segment, we're going to talk about putting a plug in the game and being able to move on with the short memory, because even though they do have a couple days off between now and their next game, you can't dwell on this stuff. And let's start at the obvious. We do not know the prognosis of Connor McDavid's injury. It is presumed to be a lower body injury, but less than 40 seconds into the game, he takes what I would call a light slash. I think perfectly reasonable play. If you want to call a trip more than a slash, I think that would be fine. If you wanted to let it go the way the referees did, I also understand. I think that would be fine. It is a very fine line as far as what we are and aren't calling. It varies very much crew by crew. I think if you are of the opinion that he should have drawn a penalty for the stick check that ultimately knocked him over and caused the injury, I think that's reasonable. You know, you have an emotional reaction to the most important player on the team, the best player in the world getting injured. That's okay. You know, that's part of sports, is that tribalistic feeling of, wow, they just hurt our best player. I am furious. I am seething mad. And we couldn't even get a penalty out of it. Now, the good thing is it has been reported by TSN that Connor McDavid's injury is presumed to not be serious, but also you don't know. There is no way to know immediately in the course of a game. I am unfamiliar with Nationwide Arena if they have certain medical equipment on site. I know it varies venue by venue what type of medical imaging devices they have on site, how they can gauge what someone has, the type of testing they can do back in a dressing room as far as mobility and flexion to determine what type of injury it is. I don't want to speculate on what type of injury it is because I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a professional, but anytime you lose an important player that early in the game, less than a minute in, first shift of the game, it's a real kick in the butt. You know, it is hard at times to put that human element under the microscope, because ultimately, and I say this pretty authoritatively, it's the element of the game we understand the least. You know, I can break down why a power play is or isn't working. I can break down why a defenseman is struggling in transition. I can't tell you how Connor McDavid's feeling. I can't tell you how Connor McDavid's injury impacts the rest of the team emotionally. You know, there are guys on that bench who they see him leave the game that early on and know how willing he is to play through injury, to play through discomfort, and to see him leave the game, it is wholly concerning. You know, it's easy to understand why guys on the team might not have their heads entirely in the game at that point. Of course, your expectation is that as professionals, they can compartmentalize and stay locked in, but I would be remiss if I didn't think the unclear status of McDavid over the course of the rest of the game, sitting on that bench, didn't loom in the back of the mind to some guys, because ultimately, and this is going to sound unfair about a team that has 20 professionals on it, but if Connor McDavid's not here for more than a few games, it's going to be tough sledding, because even with McDavid, they've been having offensive issues. You know, they'd scored 3 goals the previous game. Last night, they scored 3. Then on Friday against Pittsburgh, they had scored 4. But we're not exactly talking about the Harlem Globetrotters of offense right now. When you are struggling offensively and you can't get guys going, you know, you still don't have a Zach Hyman goal. You still don't have a Victor Arvidsson goal. Without that, the magnitude of discourse around the ancillary pieces of this team is only going to grow. And I understand the Oilers' entire formula is predicated on dominating the 40 minutes a game. McDavid and Draisaitl are out there. Ideally, they're not playing together, so you can control pretty much half of the game when they are on the ice if you want to distribute Bouchard evenly amongst them. But right now, I would say to take a deep breath, that it does not seem to be a major serious injury. Of course, things can change. That's early initial reporting. It was not attributed. It was just Oilers sources feel that it is not a serious injury for Connor McDavid. And hopefully, he just rolled his ankle and they held him out because the game got out of hand. Stuff like that. It's hard to know. And maybe there's an element of the team telling him, hey, we know you want to go back in, but we're not coming back in this game. We don't want to risk you re-aggravating this injury. It's better off if I don't want to say give up on this game, but you are our most important player. If you go out there on a slightly compromised leg, that can only make things worse for you. And if it makes things worse for you, that's going to make things worse for us. And we can't have that, frankly. It is a really difficult line to walk, especially in professional hockey, where the expectation is if you can play, you're going to play. And there's a real expectation that even if, you're 50, 60%, that you're going to attempt to go because that's the standard. And whether or not you want to talk about the ethical and the moral quandaries of that being the standard, especially knowing what we do about the human body now, what playing injured does, especially with certain injuries, how it makes you more prone to injuring other components of your body just based on the interconnectedness. If you have a calf injury, it's not a stretch to say you might develop an Achilles injury, but it is fundamentally connected because the human body is literally connected. And I will be fair. Losing Connor McDavid, even losing the best player in the world, does not give you a pass on losing a game 6-1 to Columbus. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I understand the Oilers played last night. I understand the Oilers had to travel after that game. I need more than what I got tonight. I understand you played last night. I understand that you had to keep Stuart Skinner in there because you played last night and you didn't want to put Pickard in back-to-back days. I get it. I really do get it. That no matter what, Stuart Skinner was going to take his lumps like the long man in a blowout baseball game, that no matter how many runs he gives up, how many walks he pitches, we got to get at least 4 innings out of this guy so we don't nuke our bullpen for tomorrow. And I don't think it would have been feasible to have inserted Pickard into this game, even at 4 or 5-0. I know it was 4-0 for a good majority of the game, but at a certain point, the Oilers definitely just got too sloppy with it. And I understand Columbus is not a talent. I shouldn't say not a talented. Columbus is not an established team. They are not a proven team. They have a lot of individual pieces who I thought, Kirill Marchenko is a very good hockey player. I really liked what I saw from Adam Fantilli. I liked what I saw from Cole Sillinger. Columbus is not untalented. They are unproven and they are not established. But you saw a Columbus team that was hungry tonight. And you can give the Oilers a bit of an emotional break on, well, they lost McDavid. They were worried. Okay, that's fine. I agree with you. 6-1 to Columbus? That's not going to fly by me, man. I can't accept that as a reality of the game. We are going to take our first break of today's episode, and we're going to dive into some of the things that happened in this game that really, really frustrated me coming up after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. If you are looking for some action on late night basketball, you could see whether or not Anthony Davis is going to have more than 26.5 points. Kevin Durant is going to have more than 25.5 points. If DeAndre Ayton's going to have more than 10.5 rebounds, all of that over on the homepage of PrizePicks. So if you want to get in on the action, Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download that PrizePicks app, use code LOCKEDONNHL, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this second Monday or early Tuesday, wherever you are going to end up listening to it. There will be a normal Tuesday episode as well on top of this one, but I was going to wait until tomorrow to do the episode. But after watching that game, I was irritated. I try really hard to compartmentalize my feelings as far as getting frustrated, getting happy, getting overly invested, whatever emotion I would use to describe how I felt about a game. I really try not to put too much of that into any one given game, especially a regular season game out of conference against a bottom dweller coming off of a back-to-back when you lose your best player a minute into the game. But it is hard for me to accept that this was the best the Oilers had tonight. And as we've established on this show, and you're going to hear me say another 1,000 times, the Oilers defense is not good enough to be the difference maker most nights. As we said in the playoffs last year about Stuart Skinner, if Stuart Skinner is the guy on your team, you're probably going to have a hard time. If Stuart Skinner is a guy on your team, you might be all right. And tonight, I don't want to put a lot of this loss on Stuart Skinner. You know, the Cole Sillinger goal from the point, he has traffic in front of him. I would like him to make that save because, frankly, it was savable and it wasn't that good of a shot, but you go and look at the goals they gave up to, and it's just frustrating. It is really frustrating that they continue to make the same mistakes, whether it be on the power play, whether it be on the penalty kill, or whether it's at 5-on-5. You know, the Oilers have two defensemen in front of the net on that first goal, the Sean Monahan goal. Neither one ties up the Columbus player at the net front. Marchenko has all this open space to skate into, and yes, they're on the penalty kill. They have four guys who need to defend the space that five men do. It's the entire point. We know that teams on the power play are 3 times as likely to score as teams in a 5-on-5 game situation. So I get it, but these are the same mistakes over and over and over again. You cannot tell me that this is not a teaching point. You cannot tell me the Oilers have not told their penalty killing defensemen or all of their defensemen at various points that we need to tie sticks up at the front of the net. Otherwise, we become liable to give up deflections. And that's what happens there. I know Sean Monahan's is more of a redirection than a true deflection. If you have your stick on the ice, and Ekholm is close enough where he should have been able to tie up Monahan's stick and not allow him to redirect it. So that one frustrates me in particular. The second Columbus goal, it's more of the same thing. You have a puck behind the net that gets lost in transition. When you lose a puck in transition, you cannot get everybody below the goal line. You go back and look at the goal. The Oilers have 3 players below their own goal line. Not one is in front of their own net. Adam Fantilli has 10 feet of open space in front of him to skate into. This happened in the Detroit game, the JT Compher goal. That puck ends up behind the goalie. Last night, it was Calvin Pickard. Tonight, it was Stuart Skinner. It ends up behind them. So the goalie has to guard the post closest to where the puck is. We can't have floaters going behind the net. If you want to send the second defenseman over there to try and overload and pressure the puck to move it, okay, but someone's got to stay in front of the net. Because everybody's looking at the puck and not actively playing defense, we concede a second goal against. So we're 2-0 down early in this game. That second Columbus goal comes 10 minutes into the first period. At 2-0 without Connor McDavid, that's already a tall order. You know, they were able to pull off a multi-goal comeback against the Flyers last week. The Flyers are not a great defensive team. You are not going to win a lot of games in the NHL when you concede first as much as Edmonton is. It is a simple fact of life that this game, where it is today, environmentally, contextually, what teams want to do, if you are playing from behind, it is significantly harder to score. This is not some hypothesis. This is not a theory. It is statistical fact. When teams score, they get a lead. They play more conservative defensively. They are less inclined to take chances. They are less inclined to open things up. I thought the Oilers, once they got down 2-0, way too much freelancing. I thought the forwards were flying the zone way too early, cheating to try and get to offense. I thought the defensemen were not doing a considerable job of communicating with each other, of passing assignments off to each other, losing players through their zones. And you give credit to Columbus for taking advantage of the Edmonton mistakes. You know, a lot of what high level hockey is, especially later in the season, closer to the playoffs, in the playoffs, is whichever team can take advantage of the other's mistakes more is often the one that's going to be able to make things happen for them, because that there just isn't a lot of opportunity. So being able to convert on those few small chances you do have, it's really imperative. And Columbus did not stop tonight. They get it to 3-0 at the end of before the end of the first period. And if you're sitting in that locker room as a Oilers player, you probably feel like you just got kicked in the teeth. You lost your best player less than a minute in a game. You're down 3-0 to a team that's probably going to be picking top 5 in the lottery because you blew some defensive assignments and you made some mistakes. All of that put together, this is as bad a loss as you're going to have in the National Hockey trying to be considerate. The underlying factors that make this game a bit more excusable, but you look at the first 3 goals Columbus scores, they are all tied directly to an Edmonton mistake. It is not that the Oilers got outplayed. It's not that Columbus is more talented. It's that the Oilers did not have enough attention to detail, and Columbus said, we will score here. The third goal, the Sillinger goal, that play happens because sloppy stuff behind the net. You cannot tell me the Oilers are not trying to fix these issues. You cannot tell me the Oilers aren't trying to get better defensive play out of their defensemen. That third Columbus goal happens because of a failed zone exit. If the Oilers, instead of trying to funnel the puck up the wall out of the zone for a clear, skate that puck, or they pass it to Draisaitl, who's in the middle of the ice, or they get it to Bouchard, who's in the middle of the ice, and they try and switch sides, significantly higher percentage play. But the rim out is probably the most conservative play a defenseman can make because it provides the most immediate relief. When you have the puck, especially if it's on your backhand and you can't really get as much juice on your pass as you would like, the rim along the boards is a reasonable choice because it gives your defense an opportunity to reset, and maybe maybe a trying to break the zone winger can win that puck along the boards, but you lose that puck battle after already rimming it up the wall. You are setting yourself up, and it's frustrating when you are as talented as the Oilers are to be wholly defanged the way they were today. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You go down 3-0 after one period, you ain't coming back to win 99% of the time. Yeah, 3-goal lead's the worst lead in hockey, all that great cliche stuff. That's great. This is the type of game, if you are an Oilers team that has Stanley Cup aspirations, you need to find a way to win. Yes, no McDavid hurts. Even without McDavid, the Oilers had more than enough talent to score more than 1 goal in this game. 1 goal. And that goal was scored in garbage time. When you score a power play goal with 27 seconds left to get the shutout off the board, I don't particularly care. Great, you fix the power play stats, a crumb. I don't really care. We're going to take one more break on today's show. When we come back, we're going to tie a bow on flushing this game and hoping Connor McDavid is ready to go come later in the week. Coming up next on this edition of Locked On Oilers. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. This week in the NFL on Thursday Night Football, with the New York Jets seemingly entirely dead, the Houston Texans head on over to MetLife Stadium. The Jets 1.5 point home favorites. surprisingly fun game. The surging Denver Broncos heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. The Ravens are 9.5-point home favorites. Sunday afternoon football, probably the best game of the weekend. The Detroit Lions heading to Green Bay to take on the Packers. The Lions are 3.5-point road favorites. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. I said it at the outset, and I'll say it again right now. Losing a game like that is about as rough as it gets. As much as people would like to say, "Oh, I'd rather get blown out than lose close because at least I don't get my heart break." No, that felt like a waste of 2.5 hours. The Oilers put out a D+ effort in this game and got what they deserved. Frankly, I felt there was way too much freelancing on all counts. You cannot have all of these blind passes just hoping they get where they need to go. The Oilers are too talented of a hockey team and frankly too well coached of a team to give the mediocre effort they gave tonight. And they had a lot going against them in this game. And I would have given them the kudos they deserved if they were able to find a way to come back from 2 or 3-0 down and win this game, because it would have shown some level of resolve. It would have showed some conviction, some self-belief. But instead, continuing the theory we've had about them so far this season, and I said it on yesterday's show, and I'll say it again, just when it feels like they start to take some steps forward, they take steps back. And losing McDavid is not a self-inflicted wound. The Oilers didn't choose to do that. They chose to turn the puck over a whole lot. They chose not to play net front defense. They chose not to play net behind the net defense. When you give as lackadaisical and as uncommitted a defensive effort as you did to a Columbus team that is not the Canadian national team, if you go out there and Vancouver hangs a 6er on you, if Vegas, if Florida, the Rangers, Dallas, if a genuinely good team hangs a 6 spot on you and you got your butt kicked, you can usually take something away from that. Getting your butt kicked by a genuinely bad, inferior opponent shows a lack of fortitude. And I shy away from that type of analysis most of the time because it feels unfair, because I can't speak to the mental condition of the guys on that team, on that bench. But the turnovers, the passes to no one, the lack of commitment to tying up your man in the defensive zone, a lack of forechecking, a lack of winning loose pucks. When you add all those areas where effort is measurable together, and you get outworked by a bad team, you get what you deserve. And yes, the game snowballed on them very quickly. You lose your best player less than a minute into the game. Then they score 2 minutes in. Okay, 1-0, you lost your best player. You don't know if Connor's coming back. You don't know how bad the injury is, but you're down 1-0 and you still need to play this game. Regardless of what happens, you need to play this game. 7 more minutes go by. They concede again. All right, 2-0. We've lost our best player in this game. We have got to screw it on here. We have got to dig in. But another 4 minutes go by, and it's 3-0. 3-0 in the NHL. It's pretty close to game over. It's not a guaranteed game over. Edmonton is talented. McDavid comes back in the game. We can get going. All we need is a power play. All we need is something. And tonight, the Oilers had not a single thing. Not one. You want to give them credit for the Ekholm goal that they didn't give up entirely, sure. If that makes you feel a little bit better, great, whatever. The effort tonight was not acceptable. And that is a character discrepancy. I don't think this is particularly characteristic of this Oilers team, that they're lazy, they gave up, that they quit. I think they felt the burden of, oh, well, if Connor's hurt, what are we going to do? And very quickly, 1-0 became 2-0, became 3-0, became 4-0. And this is already a team that's been struggling to score even with McDavid. So I don't want to say the game was over, but for all intents and purposes, the game was over at 3-0. And then, like I said before, the Oilers couldn't pull Stuart Skinner because Calvin Pickard had played last night. So you don't want to put your backup in 2 days in a row, even if it's just to get Skinner out of there. So even if you want to try and do that to get the juices going, I know that Chris Knoblauch had used his timeout at 3-0 when they were about to go on the 5-on-3 power play for 40 seconds to try and do something to get the juices going. And there was not a thing the Oilers could do to get anything going. Sure, they had a post, they had a few decent looks, but I struggled to care a whole lot when the defense was as bad as it was. And frankly, as is the theme of the team so far this season, don't talk to me about the defense if they can't score a goal. Yeah, could the defense do more and give you some help as forwards? Absolutely. I agree. I do. The Oilers defense does need to be better. But this team is fundamentally predicated on outscoring their opponents, situational goaltending, and dominating on special teams. And right now, they don't have anything going. They do not have a single component of their game that is consistently performing on a nightly basis. And that is frankly unacceptable for as talented a team as they have. I don't think this is going to be an all season long problem. They consistently win the shot share. They consistently win the high danger and the expected goals. They are a talented hockey team. But talent unrealized has minimal value. You can say you project great things for them, that you expect great things for them, but at a certain point, that unrealized talent becomes wasted. And I'm not here to say that 10 games into the season, the Oilers are wasting their season, but very quickly, and I'll wrap up on this note. I was having this conversation with one of my friends over the weekend, and we were just talking about getting older and how it feels like things go so fast and life snowballs on you really quickly. And it feels like it goes a million miles an hour and you can never get ahead of anything because it always feels like the next thing in your life is about to happen. And very quickly, a bad day becomes a bad week becomes a bad month, a bad few months becomes a bad year, a few bad years becomes a bad window, a few bad windows becomes a bad life. And I didn't mean to get all nihilistic and doomerist here after an October game against the Blue Jackets, but you don't get to make excuses, man. The Oilers are too good to not be converting these chances. And yes, I understand the vast majority of their scoring chances in this game come after they're down 2 or 3 goals, and it's more Columbus just giving them low quality chances, the Oilers taking them, not sustaining pressure. I understand the Oilers have glaring issues. They have roster issues that are fundamental and frankly, arguably fatal flaws to the way they're constructed. But right now, you don't get to do that. There are too many games left in this season to dwell on the mistakes of the offseason. You know, when you reflect on offseason mistakes, the following offseason, because that means you exhausted every opportunity. And the Oilers did not exhaust every opportunity tonight. I needed a whole lot more from them, and they gave a D+ at best effort to an inferior opponent who was hungry and saw an opportunity and took their lunch money. That'll do it for this second Monday edition of Locked On Oilers. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment. Are you as mad as I am? Because this is frankly the maddest I've been after a game all season. And I want to be fair because McDavid got hurt, but that does not excuse a no-show the way they did tonight. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Till then, let's go Oilers.